If you're looking to start a real estate team or scale a real estate team, this is going to be a complete masterclass. Today, I bring on Scott Kumler, who last year did 192 transactions and this year is on track to close over 220 deals, while the majority of agents are having the worst year of their career. 74% of agents at the time of this recording haven't closed a single deal, yet him and his agents are having the best year that they've ever had in history. And today, Scott's going to break down exactly how he's doing it, how he scaled his team from 3 to 55 agents in 2 years, how he's retaining those agents and developing them so that they produce high volume, and all of the secrets that he used to build a thriving team while the majority of agents are struggling just to survive. However, at the end, Scott also breaks down the biggest mistakes that you need to avoid if you want to build a successful team, and the darker side of what it's like to be a team leader and how he overcame that to build a wildly successful business, and how you can too. Now, before bringing on Scott, I wanted to mention that he loves to help other agents just like you. So if you want to book a call with him, his calendar is in the description and you can chat with him about how for free he can help you build and scale your dream real estate team. So without further ado, let's talk all things real estate teams, how to attract talent, how to retain talent, how to increase sales volume and transaction count, and how to build the team of your dreams. All right, Scott, so super excited to have you on here, man. And, obviously you've done something that many people would crave to do right now, which is scaling during one of the most difficult real estate markets that we've ever seen. Even at the time of this recording, 74% of agents haven't closed a deal yet this year, yet you're on track to break 200 deals and have one of your best years ever. So I'm excited to talk about how you've, built, scaled the team. But first, let's kick it off with, who you are, where you're from, and what got you to the point of becoming a team leader.
Yeah, when I first, my journey into real estate kind of started off in a different state. So I currently live in Arizona right now, but originally I'm from Illinois, and I've lived in Illinois my entire life. But when uh, uh, before I got into real estate, I was in retail management. So I was assistant store director up in Illinois, working in a grocery chain, working about 50 hours a week salary. When uh, at one point, I was getting off of work, and it was extremely cold outside. It was -5 degrees, and I was on my way home after like a 10-hour day, and I got a flat tire. And so I ended up having to change the tire to my car, and my lug nuts were frozen. And so it took me 2 hours to change my lug nuts to my tire. So I called my wife up at that point, and I'm like, that's it. We're moving to Arizona. I can't deal with this cold weather anymore. So went home, ended up taking out a yellow notepad with her, and listing out kind of the plan that was going to happen, and the goal was to move to Arizona and to get into real estate. At the time, she's like, okay, that's fine. Let's go ahead and do that. And so, I ended up applying at some jobs, down here in Arizona. Got another retail management job down here. And so that helped with the transition down to Arizona. Now, at the time when I first started working at this job, it seemed amazing. I'm like, okay, I don't know if I'm really going to get into real estate. Don't know if this is really going to happen. But as the business that I was working for continued to grow, they started opening up new stores, which ended up meaning that they were taking away resources from stores that were already open. And so what ended up happening was, being a salary manager, we started losing payroll, started losing those type of resources. And so they started scheduling me like 60 hours a week. I was working 6 10-hour days. And it just kind of got a little bothersome. And so then eventually I had a friend that was coming to visit us, to visit us in Arizona. And I went to my boss, and I'm like, hey, I know I can't get off weekends. I'm like, but they're coming in on Friday, they're leaving on Tuesday. Do you mind if I take Friday off so I can pick them up from the airport, and then take off like Monday and Tuesday so I can spend time with them and then bring them to the airport? And they're like, I don't know. I don't know if I'll be able to make it happen, but we'll see what happens. Well, they ended up scheduling me every single day, the entire time while my friend was here. They ended up giving another manager off. And so I was kind of so upset at that point that I ended up going into the local real estate school down here and signing up for real estate classes. I still remember when I signed up for real estate school, I called my wife up and I'm like, hey, honey, I just signed up for real estate school. And she's like, you did what? And I'm like, I signed up for real estate school. We talked about this. I was going to get into real estate. And she's like, yeah, but I thought we talked about this first. I'm like, well, we already talked about it. I'm going to get in real estate, and sign up for real estate school. So at the time, we were having a house built. And so my goal was to complete real estate school within 2 months before the house was going to be complete. And then once our house was done being built, I was going to give my 2 week notice and quit. So ended up working 60 hours a week while going to real estate school. Completed my test and passed this test before our house was done being built. And I still remember, we ended up closing on our house on a Thursday. And then Friday, I went into my job and gave a 2 week notice that I was going to quit, just completely get into real estate. No one had any idea I was actually getting my real estate license at the time. My wife was a little nervous, and she's like, what are we going to do? And so I told her at that time, I'm like, okay, because she was worried, because she was in retail as well. She's a bakery manager. And she was worried that, I was going to go off and have this like freedom, and she was going to be working, all these hours and everything like that. So at that time I told her, I'm like, don't worry, honey. I'm like, you're never going to work another holiday in retail again. So basically, I came out, just started busting open houses out. So I did about 22 open houses my first 25 days in real estate. Then I had 5 open houses a week, every single week. After that, ended up selling my first home in June of that year. So right at the end of June. Well, mid July, my wife on her way to work ended up getting in a really big car accident. Ended up getting T-boned by another car at 2 a.m. in the morning because she was going to do inventory. So she ended up tearing both her ACLs, her rotator cuff, and had a herniated disc in her neck as well too. Well, at that point, she ended up getting, basically put on disability because she couldn't work. So while she was on disability, I'm like, well, you're not doing anything anyways. Why don't you go to real estate school? Because you're just sitting at home. You don't need to be physical in order to go to real estate school. And so at that point, she started going to real estate school as well. Of course, she also had ACL surgery and stuff like that. And so, fortunately, her disability went through the holidays. And then in January of the following year, her work basically said, hey, either you have to come back or we're going to basically lay you off. So she ended up coming back to work. I think within 2 weeks, she called me up crying one day. Is like, I'm just in so much pain. I'm not healed. I don't think I can do this anymore. And so I'm like, go ahead and so I told her, I'm like, okay, go ahead and quit your job. And so she quit her job at that point too. And then she also got into real estate with me full time as well too. Unfortunately, even though her paycheck wasn't enough to support us, even when I first got into real estate, it was enough to kind of like get us by. And then of course, when she's on disability, she only got paid 66% of like what her actual income was supposed to be. And so. But fortunately, because I came out doing all these open houses right away, about the time that she got put on disability, where she got really hurt, I started having a bunch of transactions come in. So my first transaction was within 4 months, and then within 6 months, I closed 8 homes. So that was kind of like the start of how we got into real estate, and then of course we started growing the team in about mid 2022.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible, and it's crazy how things always work out at the right time for the right reasons. And I'd love to kind of start to unpack that team side of things, because many people are always wondering, you know, they're thinking about starting a team. It seems to be the natural ascension of solo agent, team leader, broker owners, kind of what most people, dream of. What got you to the point where you made the decision that you're saying, okay, I think I'm ready to start a team?
Yeah, so at the point I guess my first agent that I ever brought on my team was more by necessity, because again, I started doing open houses. That was kind of my main lead source. And so, and I was doing about 5 open houses a week. Then my first full year, I was doing 3 open houses a week. My second full year, I was doing 2 open houses a week. But the important thing when it comes to lead generation is consistency. Well, I got to the point where I was extremely busy, from a personal production standpoint. I was closing about 50 homes a year. But I also knew that I needed to still do open houses. Well, if I'm, when I want to do open house on the weekends, that's when everyone wants to see houses, and so I didn't have the flexibility. And so the first agent we ever recruited to join our team, we recruited specifically because I was looking for an agent to hold open houses with me. And so that was the first agent we ever recruited to join our team. Then we had a few agents join our team, just kind of like, looking for some additional mentorship coaching, but I was still hardcore in production, at that point. And so I wasn't really actively trying to grow, just more of just word of mouth. Agents looking at coming on board. So we had a few different agents that joined our team over the years, but I was still hardcore in production. Then about mid 2022 is when we actually officially decided to make the shift. I kind of saw the changes in what we're going to happen with the market. I kind of saw things, that's when interest rates started increasing again. And so I kind of knew things were going to start changing. And so for me, it was more about where my passion lied. I think I started getting a little burnt out from all the business I was doing from like buyers and sellers. And so I've always kind of looked at myself as kind of like a coach mentor. My mom wanted me to be a teacher when I was a kid. I wanted to be a sports coach, and everything like that. And so at that point, because I was starting to get a little burnt out from the buying and selling, I'm like, well, if I'm getting burnt out and I see the market changing, how successful am I going to be by myself? Because I'm kind of getting burnt out, right? If you're not passionate about something, you're not going to do it very well. And so I'm like, well, if I'm kind of losing that passion, maybe I just go ahead and bring on a bunch of agents that have that passion, and then I'll go ahead and teach them exactly what I did to kind of create my success. And that's kind of when the wheels started turning. So I started, recruiting a bunch of agents, bringing them on board, and started growing our team, and we grew from about 3 to 55 agents in 2 years.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible, and I'm excited to kind of dive into, that teaching of process kind of tactical side of things, because that's where a lot of team leaders struggle is they know how to do it well, but when it comes to being able to create a repeatable process for the average person to do it well, that's where they usually get stumped. Then they get frustrated because the agents aren't doing it, and then it all kind of becomes a house of cards that crumbles pretty quickly. And I've even experienced that myself. But before getting into that tactical side on the training, I would love to know, how did you scale from 3 to 55 agents in just 2 years?
Yeah, so I was pretty fortunate when I first got into real estate. I actually joined a team by with Joshua Smith as the team leader there, and so dude's got so much amazing training already, um, available to all of us. And that's kind of what allowed me to create my success. And so what happened was I didn't have to go out there and kind of recreate the wheel, because we just kind of plugged a lot of our agents into all of his training. And he, sold 7,000 plus homes himself, and he's done everything. So they're all stuff that works. And so, for example, with me, I did open houses. I can probably train agents on how to be successful open houses. But if someone's like, "Hey, Scott, how do you call expired listings?" That was never my niche. So I couldn't really train in that. And so most of the time, what happens is when agents start growing teams where they start getting really frustrated, is that they have to basically train people to be successful. And but they're also still in production. And so those agents aren't successful, and they're taking away all their time from production from training agents. They're not, basically, the team kind of falls apart because they don't have the time in order to do both. And so what we're able to do is we're able to kind of already take a training system that was in place and put our agents in it. So I didn't necessarily have to be the one that trained them. I'd kind of point them to fingers, say, "Hey, do this activity." We created a structure where we put our people in through onboarding, which tells them exactly what days to do and what activities to do. So it is a little bit more structured. But we kind of base it off of his training, which has been proven, successful. And I think that's also even that's where a lot of brokers fail too. I mean, I've seen brokerages where it's like people will join, and it's like, okay, what type of training university do you have? I mean, they might have training classes, but if I were to hop on a Zoom meeting today with an agent and teach them how to run a CMA, 2 weeks later, they're going to call me up and say, "Hey, Scott, thanks for the Zoom meeting. Can you hop on again? Because I forgot everything you told me," and then I have to go hop on again and teach them the same thing. Well, it's the same thing with brokerages. They might have in-person classes, and then they might have a speaker that will speak, but then most of the time people will leave and they forget everything that they were taught. And so that's what's important about an online university. But most brokerages don't even have that. And so with our team structure, it's nice because we already have the online university, kind of that ecosystem to put our agents in, and then we just kind of give them the kind of the roadmap and saying, "Hey, do this." And then by the time they're done with it, it's about a 30-day process. By the time they're done with it, they know exactly what they need to do in order to create that success.
Yeah, well, I think, now based on the fact that there's so many brokerages with so many different value propositions, that value proposition is critical. And a lot of people kind of, I think there's a lot of ego at play at times where people just think because they become successful, it's like people should just want to partner with me because look at me, look at what I've done. Uh, but any marketer and entrepreneur knows that people only care of, what's in it for me. Like me, myself, and I, what are you going to do to help me get that same success? And being able to recreate that in terms of duplicatable value proposition is so critical. But I would also love to talk a little bit deeper about getting them plugged into that, because I think that's where so many agents fail is they, if they're fortunate enough to join a team or a brokerage that does have some sort of training academy, then from even just looking at the data, the majority of agents don't even go through it. And then they put the blame and say, "Hey, I'm not getting any help. I don't know what to do." Um, and what matters is that they actually execute on the information that they have in front of them. So, what did you do in order to get agents to actually plug into the resources that are proven to help them succeed?
Yeah, I mean, I find a lot of it is it's that structure. People need to just be told, do this, do this, do that, And so what happens is, like, and I'll give you an example. I got an agent on my team right now who went through, who originally joined, like, he has the exact same access to online university before he joined our team. Didn't do any of it. Was super confused. Was super overwhelmed. Didn't know what to do, and it became like a mess. And they were very discouraged, and they were thinking about completely leaving the organization. I'm like, well, why don't you go ahead and try to join our team? We have the same, it's all the same thing, but we basically give you exactly every single day what to do. And, by the time he was done with it, he's like, oh, that's night and day difference. Like, well, you had the exact same access, just the problem is you got overwhelmed with so much training in there. You just need someone to kind of tell you what to do. And so with us, what we do, because for example, Josh's training, he has a lot of good training, but he also has some advanced stuff too. He has some advanced things as far as like hiring assistants, bringing on agents, stuff like that. Most of the stuff that people don't even care about. Even like with this tracking, it's like a team leader tracker. Agents don't really care about that. Team leaders do. Agents don't really care about that. So for me, what I did was I kind of weeded out all the stuff that's like, I'm like, don't worry about this stuff. And I basically said, hey, these are things I want you to watch just to get going. So I basically say, hey, watch this video, then perform this activity. And then they have a check mark that they check off that shows us where they're at. So I kind of keep an eye on where they're at throughout the process. And then, of course there's periodic check-ins and stuff like that too. But there is kind of a test out period, because you're right. Some agents, even if you get in that structure, they're not going to do it. But we do find a lot of our agents kind of go through it because it's a little bit more black and white, and it just tells them exactly what to do, so they get a little bit less overwhelmed from it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think there's such an important lesson there for anybody looking to build a team or an organization, is that overwhelm, statistically speaking, is the number one contributor to churn or retention issues. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. If you look at a business or an entrepreneur, the entire goal is to increase the lifetime value of your product or of your service. And when you look at, a team leader, the goal is to maximize the lifetime value of an agent joining your team. And if they don't stay, you can start with 50 agents and end the year with 50 agents, even if you attracted 50 more agents, because you lost 50.
Mhm.
And that's where a lot of agents that run teams really struggle, is that retention issue, which we'll get into. But just going back to the, kind of recruiting side of things and being able to build your team, how were these agents, 3 to 55 agents in 2 years, like, how were they finding you, or what was kind of the process? Were they, just reaching out to you because they knew your name locally, or was there some sort of advertising and marketing strategy, and then they would, book an onboarding call? Or, what's your advice to somebody looking to scale a small team to something that's quite sizable?
Yeah, I mean, so there's two things that kind of helped us grow our team the quickest. And the first was we do some advertisements on Indeed. So we do get people that will reach out to us from that, and then also through social media. I find, so my social media. I didn't get a whole ton of business from a production standpoint, but I get a ton of people that follow me from agents. So like when it wasn't, like when I was in personal production, most of my business from social media was like past clients that I was friends with on Facebook, and then they remembered who I was because they see my posts all the time and stuff like that. But I wasn't getting a ton of new business. But I do find that a lot of agents, like especially if they see our like Indeed ad, they might start following me first and kind of seeing, Instagram, what we're doing, Facebook. And so then by the time, whether they pass, maybe they're in school at the time, so like, well, let me follow this guy and kind of keep an eye on them, or whatever that may be. Then they reach out to me via social media. So I do a lot of people that will do that as well too. I feel like I have more agents that go to our website than than buyers or sellers right now, because a lot of our agents will also, like, they might see me and then they also go through our website and like apply through our website, wanting to speak to me. So I do get a lot of high quality agents that way as well too. But I'd say those are kind of like our main three ways that typically we attract agents to our team.
That makes sense. And so now let's kind of transition before we get into the production scaling side of things, retention, because this is the bane of most team leaders' existence. Is they, put all this effort to attract talent and they lose it equally as fast, and they start running into these massive issues where, time, money, energy, all of their resources are just constantly trying to keep the growth coming because they're losing as fast as they're growing, sometimes net negative month over month, which is a very dangerous place to be, because if your business isn't growing, you're not going to have a business in a little bit. And so, what did you do? What are some of the key components that you did to be able to actually retain those agents once they made the conscious decision to say, hey, I want to join this group? They've got the training, the resources. Um, a lot of people are excited in the beginning, that excitement dies off very quickly. What do you do to keep them?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously, I think clear direction at the beginning is very important because I think a lot of times what will happen is an agent will join a brokerage and then they're like, they don't hear from the brokerage again. They're like, after 30 days, like, okay, what do I do? I don't have no idea what to do. So I think that clear direction at the beginning is extremely important. So that will hopefully keep them longer than 30 days. And so then after that, I think the important thing is you want to have a process in place to support and service your agents. Because at the end of the day, I mean, there are clients, right? As a team leader, our agents are our clients, and so we have to make sure that we have a process to serve and support. And so some of the biggest complaints you hear about from agents with their brokerage, other teams, is that, like if they're on a team, I can't get a hold of my team leader, or I can't get a hold of my broker, or whatever that may be. And so, so to me, I think that support is extremely important. You also want to make it no, you don't want an agent to feel like they're ever bothering you as well too. Like even if it's like a dumb question, you don't want to be like, make them feel like that, right? You want to make sure that you're that there's no such thing, and you want people to understand that they should come to you because, like, as I've always told our agents, I'm like, I'd rather fix a problem up front than fix a problem down the road when you made a mistake because you were afraid to ask me, And so, I tell all of our agents, I can tell how successful a real estate agent's going to be by how often my phone rings, and because typically that means they're asking questions, they're learning, and they're out there working, right? Typically, if I don't hear from someone, then that's a little bit of worrisome to me. So, as a team leader, I think it's important to have that structure in place to make sure you can always serve and support them no matter what's going on, and that you're available. Or you even like you can have a sales manager. Like for example, right now I have a sales manager, so both of us are available. And then we kind of split the agents that we like, do one-on-one coaching with. Typically I'll coach with our top producers, like on our team, and then he'll kind of help someone maybe that's like underperforming and needs a little bit more hand holding, at times. But then our agents can basically get a hold of either of us whenever they want. And now I have a sales manager, my phone rings a lot less than I used to, but they can get hold of either of us, and the sales manager is the same way as well. Going back to Josh, one of the reasons I will say that most people stuck around so long, with Josh, even though he's a great coach, is his director of operations, Ashley, because his director of operations, Ashley, was great from a support standpoint. She always, I used to joke that whenever an agent would call me up, I'd always, say, what would Ashley do? How would she handle the situation? And so she was great from a retention standpoint as well, too, because she was so supportive of the agents that were within his organization that a lot of people love being there and love to stay. And so I think that's a huge factor, is the support standpoint, and being available for your agents whenever they need some help.
Yeah, and it makes sense. That's where, especially in troubling times, oftentimes people, especially the newer agents, have this feeling like, oh, the team leader's like too busy for me, or they're not going to have time for me. When they feel like that, then you don't open that door for them and let them know that, hey, I'm here for you. Oftentimes it leads to almost like it's like ghost ghost retention issues where it's like that you don't even know why they left, and it's something that could have been solved ahead of time. It's just there was no communication. I think, like you say, that all comes down to setting expectations in the beginning, which is what most people don't do. They kind of just get all enthralled by the hype of coming on board, and kind of just say, okay, like now time to get started. Now, one thing before getting into the scaling of production is I know that you do in-person events as well. And I know that this is something that at least my past brokerage used to do as well, where they would do kind of local in-person events, and that would be some sort of opportunity to be able to build culture. Because from my experience in building teams, culture is one of the most critical components of agents not feeling like they're alone. Do you want to speak to that, or is there any kind of advice on how to build culture, community, and that family-like feeling within a team?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously, we do a lot of like virtual meetings and stuff like that. And so you're right. A lot of times when you go to the virtual world, people typically sometimes will feel alone. They won't feel like they'll be connected with other people. And so that's extremely important to do. And so for us, typically we do like a once a quarter, like in-person event. I actually have a lunch and learn coming up this month with our agents at one of our lender partner office spaces. Sometimes we'll partner with like other teams. Like, we've partnered with another team recently doing a Dave and Buster's event, where all of our agents can come to that, get together in person, and just kind of like let off steam. Not really, they can talk about real estate and they have conversations, of course, about everyone's business and stuff like that. But it's more of a fun environment. We'll also typically do a once a year, like at the end of the year or beginning of the year from the previous year, we'll do like an awards ceremony we kind of like we'll do like a either a lunch or a dinner, and provide like awards for our agents for like our top performers that year as well too. And so typically we try to do at least once a quarter in person, so that way everyone can kind of get together. We even like some of our even our partners will sometimes come into town as well, and we'll do like a breakfast for like our top producers. Like we did one recently where our top producers, we had a nice little breakfast for them as well too, with one of our vendor partners. So yeah, I do think it's extremely important because then that kind of builds that culture and connectivity to other agents, and then gives people an opportunity to just talk to each other and find out what they're doing and connect.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's, now more than ever as things are, transitioning to, artificial intelligence, cloud-based brokerages, technology and social media, that ability to connect and foster community is more important now than ever. And there's really creative ways that you can do it both in person and virtually if you know how to do it properly. And so, let's kind of dive into the sales side of things. Obviously, being able to increase your sales volume, you did 147% in 2023 to 24, and now you're on track to scale that even further. And this is a year where, I see kind of a parting of the seas where you've got the vast majority of agents having the most difficult year they've ever had. There's a mass exodus in the industry of people underperforming and just saying, I'm out of here. And then you've got this sliver over here where they're having the absolute best year of their life. They're taking market share from the complacent agents and they're thriving. And so you see this like stark contrast of what's happening in the industry right now. What are you doing to be able to stay on the sliver side over here that's crushing it, growing and building momentum, while the overarching theme across the industry is, struggle, distraction, overwhelm, and ultimately leaving?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of it does come down to like mindset. I love this type of market because I look at it as an opportunity to take a ton of market share. And so that's typically when we have our team meetings, that's a conversation we talk about a lot, like especially even during like holiday weeks or like during off times of the year. I'm like, this is the opportunity that we can actually take more. Like we just came out of Labor Day. I'm like, well, most agents take off Labor Day. I'm like, let's go out there and just take all their business and sell more homes. And we had one of our best weekends yet this last weekend. We got 5 homes under contract in just one day, and so it's so to me there's a huge opportunity, and it all comes down to mindset because most agents, they kind of like were used to 2020 2021 where everyone was buying a home and they had friends and family, and then they didn't understand what it took to actually create success in this industry, and most people have unrealistic expectations. And so for us, we just kind of keep our foot in the pedal. We also continue to invest more. Typically during down markets, what will happen is most people start getting out of, investing money into their business because they're like, okay, I'm not making as much money, so now I'm going to go ahead and take away stuff, from our team, or we got to cut costs or anything like that. We're actually spending more money. So we've started investing in a lot of different systems. For example, I know you'll like this AI. We recently just got House Whisperer for our team, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but it's kind of like a virtual assistant, like AI system where that connects to our CRM, so our agents are able to kind of plug in there and make their life more efficient. So we kind of invested in that. We have a performance management system that we invested in, which allows us to performance manage our agents and kind of look on the back end of what type of quality conversations are they having, so that way we can help with the coaching calls as well. So for us, we're just kind of doubling down. We're continuing to add in, more lead source we provide to our agents, which is obviously during down markets, people like tend to spend less money on leads because they're making less money. But to me, my mindset is to spend more money. Obviously margins are important, but, at the same time, I mean, there is something to be said for like kind of putting your foot in the gas and spending the money. Obviously you got to get the return on investment, but eventually as things start to kind of shift back upwards, we're going to be so much further ahead than everyone else, just because we didn't, take our foot off the gas during this time. And so, because of that, I mean, one of the things I'm, most proud of is I've never taken a step back in sales. Ever since I got licensed 2017, every single year we've done more sales than the previous year. Even when we started growing the team, it's the same thing. We're on pace to do our best year yet.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think as you alluded to, perspective is so important in markets like this. Like I've found that if you look right now, you hear that typical quote of you're the average of the five people you surround yourself with. And when you look at most brokerages and most teams, the overall narrative is kind of things are so difficult. Woe is me. Interest rates are going back up. It's going to be difficult. Politics. Like there's all of these kind of excuses that are on the negative side of things, and then you have somebody like you that's saying, hey, let's avoid all those distractions. Let's control what we can control, which is our perspective and our mindset to say, this is the time to double down. This is the time to spend more. This is the time to, invest into yourself and take market share. Like two radically different perspectives on the same situation. And that's where I think a lot of people surround themselves with other agents that are all in that doom and gloom, sorrow stage, and it's pretty difficult to get out of that if that's what you're surrounded by. And that's why your environment is so critical. Now, I would like to talk about something that you kind of just slipped in there, which is profitability, right? I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of P&Ls of team leaders and of brokerages over the last 5 years, and there's a lot of them that are doing big numbers that are broke
Hmm.
and they're not making any money. And then I've seen some that are doing, half the volume, but their profit is, 4 or 5x.
Yeah.
And so what has that been like for you in order to make sure that you not just build a team where you get all these bodies and scale from 30 to 55, but that you actually have a business, like something profitable that is growing as well?
Yeah, I think it kind of comes down to leverage, right? Like, I mean, how do you leverage the resources around you? And so, one of the first things I look at before I add anything into my business is what can I leverage already around me that's not going to cost me any money. Like, for example, the training, we put people through, Josh's training or like your training with Social Agent Academy, stuff like that. It's things that I'm not paying money for, but it allows us to kind of go out there and create the success. I mean, Josh has always been a real estate coach of mine, and I've, I never had to pay him other than, when I first was doing in us team splits, and everything like that, but I didn't have to pay him for his coaching. Some coaches out there, you're just paying $1,000 for a phone call, every single time, and so the first thing we do is we leverage everything that we currently have. Um, and then obviously when you have a team structure, there are certain things like affiliates, things of that nature you could do to add some more profitability as well too. And so we've started kind of getting into the affiliate game where we have like, partnerships with Title, home warranty, stuff like that. But you also have to stay competitive too though, so like, for example, a lot of times, we know, in our market, we know who our top competition is. And so one of the things I'm always looking at is, well, how do our splits compare to theirs? And are we giving them more value for a better cost than everyone else? And that's typically the answer is yes, for what we're able to give to our agents. And a lot of it has to do with our leverage that we do have, and so I say leverage is the most important thing. And then we're always kind of pushing, pulling. I'm not afraid to try new things. I'll be, if I'll be the first to be honest with you, that I've wasted a lot of money on a lot of things in this industry, that I'm like,
Same.
all right, maybe that didn't work out, and then I learn it and say, okay, now a lot of times though, if I've wasted a lot of money, it's not because it's because my system wasn't correct. For example, I'll give you an example. One time I bought a whole bunch of realtor.com leads for myself. Spent $13,000 on realtor.com leads, didn't sell a single home. Now, the reality is, do realtor.com leads suck? No. A lot of people convert them at a very high ratio. My system sucked at that time. So it wasn't
Yeah.
like the lead sucked. It's just the way I was doing it. And so I scaled it back, obviously didn't do it anymore. But like as a team, now that I have the right people and the right mentors who will crush at a high level, with realtor.com, I'm able to now create a better system in place. So that's something that we're probably going to be adding on to our team here in the future is adding more realtor.com leads, because I understand now I have a better process to convert those leads. So I'll probably have a better ROI than I did when I was doing it by myself, and um, yeah, so that's kind of that's one of the things I would say is I'm not afraid to spend money, but I make sure make sure I'm taking those risks intermittently. So it's like, okay, I'm taking a risk over here, seeing how that works. Okay, that didn't work. Let me go ahead and try this over here. Try different things and see what works. And then because of the leverage that we have, we're able to do that without and still be profitable as a team.
Yeah, definitely. I think, even just, there's a very important concept that you just touched on, which is taking ownership of how, previously invested into something like realtor.com, got the leads, didn't convert them. The majority of agents blame the system. They don't take ownership of themselves. And the only time that you can make a change is if you take ownership that it's a problem with you. And that's what I see with a lot of agents on any platform, any avenue of lead generation is they blame the platform, they blame the strategy, they blame the team leader, the broker owner, the brokerage, and they never take ownership and say, maybe it was something I was doing wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead, you got.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah. The one thing I was gonna add in there, I always tell all of our agents on our team is, I'm like, whether you think a lead source is great or whether you think it sucks, you're right. I'm like,
Mhm.
because the reality is your mindset is going to dictate how well you do. Let's look at a platform like Zillow. I talk to a lot of agents that are like, Zillow leads suck, they're terrible, whatever. Well, I know a lot of agents that convert 10+% on Zillow leads. So it's probably something that you're doing, and then you need to maybe hone your skill set, figure it out. But the same way with anything. So if you're not passionate about something, like if you don't, like for example, if you're open houses, if you go in there and you're just not, you're not in it, you're just like there to be there. It's like, well, don't waste your time doing it anyways, because you're not going to have success because you're not really motivated to create that success. So that's the way I always look at with any lead sources. It's either it's good or bad depending on how your mindset is with it.
Yeah, definitely. And one other thing I wanted to touch on there is you said a really critical word that I think needs to be echoed for people looking to start or scale a team, which is value. Um, because what I've seen with agents that struggle to grow teams and end up failing pretty much 100% of the time is it's a race to the bottom. They do an audit of what their competition is and say, if I just undercut the split, then people are going to want to join me. But they don't look at it from a profitability perspective, and then they're undercutting, they're not making profit. They have to do, as a team leader, 80+% of the production themselves. They burn out because now they're doing their own production and playing adult daycare with no profit margins. And then it's just an absolute race to the bottom. And, the ones that I've seen win are able to have a healthy split but overcompensate on value to the point where agents don't even think about it. They're like, of course it makes sense to pay that and to stay for this reason because this is helping me run a more successful business, right?
Mm. Yep. Yeah. No. Yeah. Definitely. With value is very important. And so when I say, like, we talk about splits, I look at like, okay, what is my competition, right? So we have a Zillow Flex team here in the Valley, and so I'm not trying to compare myself to other teams that aren't Zillow Flex teams. I'm not even comparing myself to small Zillow Flex teams. Like if someone's a small Zillow Flex team, they probably don't offer as much or they don't spend as much to help their agents. But it's like, hey, I'm gonna give you Zillow leads, and they have maybe smaller splits than us. And so a lot of times what I'm looking at when I'm kind of comparing as far as what our competition looks like is I'm looking at like some of the top Zillow teams and like what their
Mhm.
splits are versus ours, and then how can we be comparable to that. But then the way I've always looked at stuff, my industry in general, whether it's agents or even when I was in production, is like, how can I help as many people as possible? Like I didn't really care about, obviously money comes when you help people and you provide value to people. Like when I was in production, if you ask me, I can look it up now and see what my sales volume is. But if you were to ask me like on just a regular Friday, hey, what was your sales volume last year? Probably wouldn't be able to tell you. I'd probably tell you how many transactions I did because that's how many people I helped, And so it didn't really, I've never cared about a sale, my sales volume. It's always been how people can help. But same thing with like agents, it's not, to me, it's like how many agents can I help? And so the more people you help, naturally your business will continue to grow because you'll be able to continue to provide value. And so if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you're not doing it to really help people, your agents or buyers or sellers will see through it. And so then they'll end up, saying, okay, you don't really care about me. You don't care about my business. And I would hope most of the agents on our team would probably, if you called any one of them up, hopefully they would say, hey, I care about, Scott cares about me and cares about our business. And that's kind of the way that I operate is I'm like, how can I help as many agents as possible? And then the money will follow after that.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that I see with a lot of teams too that are struggling is they focus so much on the vanity metrics to the point where they think the flex is having 55 agents, eh, but if 30 of them have done 0 deals this year, that paints a bit of a different story. Whereas the real flex is how many of the 55 can you help actually produce and provide for their family because
Mhm.
you genuinely care, like you. Now, let's switch gears a little bit here because obviously, you and I are partners now and same with Josh, and we'll get into that in a second, but what are some of the darker sides or maybe less attractive things about building a team in the sense of, for example, you reach a limitation to scale, you miss out on opportunities, you sometimes lose your top talent because they want to go become a team leader themselves. Like there's all these things that I find, teams end up starting, they scale, but then they hit a plateau and it's really difficult to kind of push past that unless you want to invest more of your time. But the whole goal, to my understanding, is to get time back. And you get caught in kind of this conundrum a little bit. And so I'd love to talk about, maybe we've obviously talked about the incredible things about building a team, but what are some of the maybe limitations or downfalls of just staying at a local team at a traditional brokerage?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of downfalls. Obviously, kind of like you mentioned, I mean, losing top talent, and especially if you provide leads too, it's always disheartening anytime someone leaves and then they steal some of your leads as well too, and they close those transactions. And so that's something that typically it has happened, to our team is before, and it's kind of like a little stab in the back, type thing, so you do have that, your top talent leaving. There obviously are people doing the work because you can't control someone's motivation. Like if someone you can spend all these hours coaching someone. That's part of the reason why we kind of have our system now the way it is. It's like we want people to prove themselves to us first before we start giving a bunch of our time. Because one of the downsides is you could be a real estate coach or a team leader, and if you're spending like every week with someone, this is why our system's a little bit better. Is you're spending a week with someone trying to train them, and then they don't actively go out there and do the activities. You're going to, it's gonna be a little bit tougher. Like I'll give you an example. When I first started building a team, one of the things I did was I said, okay, open house is my lead generation strategy. I'm going to go ahead, every new agent comes on board, I'm going to go ahead and do an open house with them and show them exactly what I do for open houses to create success. But I always get a ton of turnout for that. We do an open house together. I'd even give them the signs, like, here's the signs, take these ones, and you can go out there and do it. We leave, wouldn't do any open houses. And so then I'm like, I'm spending 4 hours on a Saturday showing you how to do an open house that I didn't really care about doing myself. I was doing this just to show you, and then you didn't even go do the activity. So those are definitely some of the downsides. Now that's obviously one of the reasons why we made the move over to EXP, is because it took away some of the fallbacks with a traditional brokerage, because again, if someone leaves, you couldn't really help them anymore. Like when I'm recruiting an agent to join our team on a traditional brokerage, it's like you either can join our team or don't and leave. And so in this model, it gives us the ability to help people in so many facets. It's like, okay, now you can join our team, or you can join an individual agent and we can still give you all the training, coaching, and support. But then also one of the things that I'll do, especially on our some of our recruiting calls, is I talk about the agent career growth path. Because most of the time people use a team as a stepping stone, where it's like, I want to join a team right now because I'm new to real estate. I want that hand holding. I want leads, I want whatever. But the idea and the goal is to eventually one day become an individual agent. Now, there are people that are on our team that I think will be around for a while. They love being on the team, and I don't think they have any intention of leaving. But naturally, it's going to happen where people are going to be like, okay, now I'm ready to be individual. I don't want to pay these team splits anymore, or anything like that. When a traditional brokerage, then has to leave. That's their only option. In this model, what it allows us to do is allows us to kind of say, okay, you're on the team now. Now you can be an individual agent, but then you also have the career growth path. So let's say you love being on the team, but you want to kind of build a team within our team. Now you can do that because on that revenue share model, you bring anyone on board, they can join our team as a Zillow team, and then you kind of have your own little micro team within our team. And you can do that. Let's say you want to go ahead and become an individual agent, grow your own team. Well, now you can go ahead and flip-flop to an individual agent. We can give you our exact same blueprint that we created to go from 3 to 55 agents within 2 years, and we can do that. Or the other thing that we gave our agents the ability to do is become an agent leader mentor. And that's kind of where things kind of shifted for us. Is now some of our top producers, what they do is they become agent leader mentors. And so now we're able to give our newer agents the ability to shadow some of our more experienced agents, and then we put them underneath our top producers downlines. They have an incentive, and from that revenue share model, to go ahead and coach them. So it actually adds that extra level of support, because for me, I'm not in production anymore. So if someone said, hey, Scott, can I shadow you for a showing? Well, no, you can't, because I'm not showing any houses. I can't do it.
Yeah.
But now the agent leader mentors, you can, because they're our top producers, and it's more geographical location. So if we have a few in the East Valley, okay, you live in the East Valley, boom, I'm gonna have you, have you put this person as your sponsor. You live in the West Valley, boom, I'm gonna have you put this person as a sponsor. And so then on top of that, that creates kind of leaders within our organization. So then, of course, if you build that revenue share too, there's also less likely to leave. They feel like they're leaders, so they feel like there's a career growth path versus I'm just an agent on a team. So
Mhm.
that's kind of the thing that we've implemented, which I think has been a game changer for us.
Yeah, for sure. Like, whenever you look at this model, most team leaders don't understand that EXP amplifies pretty much 100% of the benefits that you get as a team leader, and alleviates and mitigates all of the pain points. You get to keep your branding, you get to keep your name, you still have ownership, and you can scale and get compensated from agents that partner with you. but now it can be globally. You don't carry any risk. You don't have to play adult daycare. And you're actually able to have that long term path, because I think this is where a lot of team leaders aren't looking far enough into the future, that it's very rare that even a good, healthy team gets acquired in, the future for a healthy amount. Usually it's a one-time lump sum for a fraction of what you were expecting, and all of that hard work, and now you're kind of, left there. And I think that's only going to get more difficult as artificial intelligence, increases and new technology increases. Those valuations are going to get hammered. Whereas, somebody in your position, you're now able to build that long-term play where, again, you retain your top talent, which is one of the best parts, because now they have the same opportunity that you do, instead of becoming your competition after all that hard work, to be able to support and train them to get them to that point of being strong. So let's kind of pull it together with helping people understand, obviously you as a successful team leader, you've done some incredible things, but why specifically did you decide to join our group at EXP and EXP in general? And what can people expect when partnering with you? Because I'm sure there's somebody listening to this that says, I'd love to scale a team, or I have a team that's struggling and I want to align with somebody that can help me, blow this up and achieve its full potential.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously there's multiple reasons why we moved over to EXP. One, I kind of I already knew Josh from being on his team before, and Josh moved over to EXP as well. That gave me an opportunity to partner with you, which obviously social media is like one of our huge weaknesses. Myself, and I do okay posting on social media, but I'm not like I don't get a ton of business off of it. So I feel like social media is probably the hottest lead source out there, and so if it gives our agents the ability to kind of create that training where it's a kind of a step by step process of exactly what to do, is kind of a no brainer. I feel like within our organization, there's not a whole lot of weaknesses. Like there's always someone that has a huge strength. Like I even talk about Ashley from like support standpoint when I'm talking to an agent about joining our organization. It's like, she's great from a support standpoint and she knows all the EXP systems and all that stuff. So you're someone to go to for that too. Um, so that was one of the reasons. The other reason was the structure aspect of it. We talked about the agent leader mentor a little bit. For me, my before I moved over to EXP, I always said that I wouldn't leave my previous brokerage unless I felt like I could make it was in the best interest of our agents on our team. And so for me, that's originally why I didn't move over when Josh first moved over, because I'm like, I need to know 100% certain if this is the best decision for the agents. I can understand why it makes sense for me, but I also wanted to make sure it's going to make sense for our agents. So that came about 5 months to really analyze it. I think I probably watched your video like 3 or 4 times to kind of like, figure out the EXP explained type stuff. And so I really took a deep dive into it. And then when I started realizing the way that I can structure it to where I could have a huge impact on our agents and help our agents make more money, that's when things kind of shifted for me, where I'm like, I think this model makes a whole lot of sense because I can help our agents out a ton from that standpoint. And so that's one of the reasons why, a couple of reasons why we moved over there. And then as far as partnering with us, obviously I've been with Josh ever since I first got into real estate. So we've already kind of, our structure and our team building was based off a lot of his training. So I can easily, show anyone how to build a team from, 0 to, 30 to 40 agents fairly quick. So it's a pretty, and it's a pretty structured process, and I can just take them through exactly what I went through as far as that's concerned. And I can do it from any state, it's kind of it's duplicatable. And so that's something that someone could expect, especially if they want to grow a team. Let's say they're a top producer and they're getting burnt out, because that happens. I talked to an agent the other day who's crushing it, but she's getting ready to build a team, but she's afraid, she doesn't want to go through all the headache of figuring out how to build a team. Well, if someone wants to join us, we can take the headache off you and just tell you exactly what we did, and then just copy it, and you'll be able to grow a team, fairly quick. So that's what someone would be able to expect, if they were to partner with us. Did I answer all your questions?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, now that things are changing, now more than ever, it's important to understand that success leaves clues and to just model what's already been proven to work. So many people are trying to reinvent the wheel or do it themselves so that they have the feather in the cap and be able to stroke their ego a little bit to be able to say, hey, look at me, I did this all by myself. But if you look at anybody successful, the only way to buy back time is to align with people that have done it before, can help you avoid all of their mistakes and do it in a fraction of the time without any of the headache.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, yeah. One thing I wanted to add in there, like I always tell people, I even tell my team this too. I'm not very smart at all. I'm just good at copying people. I'm like, I don't. None of my ideas are original. I'm just listening to the right people, copy everything they do, and then we create success. And so that's how we create the success, and that's why masterminds are so important and stuff like that. Because you just listen to other people, and just do what they do, and that's how easy business is. You just copy someone else.
100%. Well, if you're listening to this and you either want to scale a team, you have a team that's struggling, or you just want to, align with people that are going to be able to help you take it to the next level, I've linked all of Scott's information in the pinned comment and in the description. Book a private call and just have a conversation, right? One of the quotes that has changed my life is the most expensive thing you can own is a closed mind. And you can't make an educated decision if you don't have the education to make the decision. And so that's why being able to book that call with Scott and Josh is so valuable, because it might not be for you, but at least you'll know. And unless you know, you can't make that informed decision. And right now is the time to be taking market share and the time to align with people that know exactly how to do it in the fastest rate possible. So, Scott, thanks so much, man, for coming on and sharing your blueprint and the roadmap of what's gotten you to this point.
I appreciate you, man.
All right, guys, book that call below, and can't wait to chat with you and help you take your business to the next level.